I am so excited to be
We
with
are so
two of you.
excited, actually.
Welcome to Houston. Is it your first time?
It is my absolute first time, and I was so excited about coming to Texas. After my confirmation to the Supreme Court, I've had the privilege of meeting people from Texas who travel to Washington quite often. At one event recently, I said to a group of Texans, do half of you live here? Or do you have a second home here? Because I meet Texans who come to Washington for all sorts of activities there, which actually is very gratifying, because what it means to me is that Texans are actively engaged in their communities. And as you know from my book, that's a huge message in my book.
There's no doubt.
That we have to take pride in being whatever we are, Texans, Puerto Ricans, Latinas,
Yeah.
from whatever background we are. We have to take pride in that, but we also have to be proud of being Americans and engaged in the larger society. And so that proves to me that Texans are not sitting back and letting Washington do what it wants to them.
We'd like to
They're
think we're
coming and
special.
making their voices heard.
Well,
I like that.
I have to say, as a Rice graduate, that we asked if you would join us at Rice University when I chaired the first ever Hispanic Gala for the centennial. You were not
did.
able to say yes. I did meet Chief Justice Roberts on another occasion, but I'm just going to publicly say,
Now.
if you ever want to come back to Rice, we'll have you anytime.
Who's your president now?
The current David Lebron, who was a colleague of Chief Justice Roberts and the
And-
Law Review.
Well,
Yes.
not to say anything, you won't like it.
Okay.
He was dean of
Columbia. Yes.
I knew him well then.
Yes.
And if anyone were to get me back, it would be him. Rice is very lucky to have him.
Well, I will tell you, his bride, also fellow colleague, Princeton graduate,
Ping Soon.
Wai Ping Soon, who we've interviewed, is quite honestly very impressive, and you would love her.
I thank you. I have promised many of the Texans that I met that I would eventually make a trip here. And this is my first, but it won't be my last, I promise you.
Madam Justice, you are a woman of first, certainly the first Latina on the High Court, but many titles as well. You've been called tough, most influential, most powerful, a wise Latina. Sonia from the Bronx. Who is Sonia Sotomayor? Describe yourself.
My book does that. That was the purpose for writing this book. Well, let me change that. There were many purposes to writing the book. If you write a book, hopefully you have many layers to the book, but a very important ultimate layer was my attempt to make sure that I held on to me, Sonia. You see, I was thrust onto not just a national stage, to a world stage when I was appointed to the Supreme Court. And you guys know, because you're television personalities, that when you're in the public eye, the attention that paid to you is overwhelming.
You're hyper scrutinized.
Exactly. Not only are you scrutinized, but people pay attention in a way that feeds your ego sometimes. And it's important not to let that sort of take over and to make you seem to yourself more important than you really are. I had to hold on to the Sonia who I am inside. And part of the way to do that was to write this book, so that if 5 or 10 years you see me getting a little too heady and full of myself, I'm telling you, but I tell my friends, make me read the book to come down to earth and remember what the real Sonia is like. It's almost as if the Cinderella life
Yes.
is something that you can have at every single moment. That's not the way life works. It is perpetual compromise.
No, I thought it was fabulous, but you know what Justice, what you also said, which I thought was so powerful, in your comment about having it all, you also say some very powerful things, supportive of staying-at-home moms and career women. Because the truth be told, that actually is a much harder job. We get the luxury of having these tangible gratifications and acknowledgments that you're smart, that you've made it. These moms are home, and they get appreciated, but it's not as tangible.
It's a
It's a very
realm.
different kind
Yes.
of appreciation, generally, Their families appreciate it and understand it, but the greater public sort of minimizes them and their importance when it's critical. What I do say in the book, and it's my favorite line, I hate that line that you quoted.
Yes.
I hate when people think that stay-home mothers are somehow not living up to their potential, or that I'm less of a woman because I chose not to have children.
Or their role is
That's,
minimized.
and you said that you say it's absurd, and you're absolutely right.
It's true equality when we're looked at equally, and when we can make the choice without feeling guilty, and that's really when we're going to reach equality.
But the perennial quagmire.
Yes,
Always.
yes. I come from where they did. I was the kid at the window. My book describes the moment that I saw for the first time, personally, a political figure, and it was Robert F. Kennedy. And he was visiting my projects in the Bronx, and I was the kid at the window looking down at him. So I wasn't even important enough to make it to the first floor to shake his hand. And he influenced my life. And so having been that kid at the window, having been the person on the other side of the serving line, I know how important it is for people who've reached a position like mine, A, not to forget, but B, to say thank you to them, because they help us. They are the ones who make our life easier.
And we could be them, which is your point.
Absolutely.
We
are them.
There's no doubt.
We are
There's no
them.
doubt. When I'm an immigrant, my father came here making $5,000 a year, World Health Organization, we were 5 children. And when I give speeches, and I've thought this always, the only difference in some ways, why my life was easier, why I was able to clerk on the Fifth Circuit, I could say I was a naturalized citizen by 1 month, was in part because I didn't swim here. I got the luxury of having a ticket, an airline ticket. But my situation could have been very different.
It is different for a lot of people. And so to the extent that we can not forget that, I think that's critical to me.
And you talked about looking through the window at Kennedy, yet you are now front and center. You administered the oath of office to Vice President Joe Biden at the inauguration of President Barack Obama. What were you thinking in regard to the mark of history that you have made?
I read on the internet last night when I was checking my emails that President Obama, before he got off the platform, he turned around and said, I have to look at this. It may be my last time. And I realized that I have a gift that's enormous. That was my first time. But hope to God it won't be my last. Not swearing in vice presidents, but I am a Supreme Court justice, and we're invited to sit on that platform. And all I was thinking about as I was watching this was, oh my God, thank you. Thank you. This is such an extraordinary moment. I never imagined this great gift. And all I could say was, thank you. But it's not just, I thanked God because in the end, he's the guy up there that does it for all of us. But I also have to say thank you to my community. Because you see, I stand on the shoulders of the many people that I describe in my book who helped me achieve what I have. And for the many leaders in our communities who not only knocked open doors, but knocked them down sometimes to ensure that Latinos were given a fair shake here. And during my nomination process, I know that Latinos from all over the country, and especially Texas, were very active and vocal in making their voices heard and telling people how important it was for me to be given a fair shake during the nomination process. And I'm grateful for that. I'm really grateful. And I felt that gratefulness on Monday.
Justice, you talk about thanking, and you thank God. In your book, you also have anecdotes and thank yous to your mother and to your abuelita. I was taken by your description of being able to drive a fancy car, the Testarossa, but in that same breath, and talking about being fearless, You spoke of your abuelita and vámonos de parranda. And I have to stop. You know, and of course I'm Argentinian, so I had to stop for a minute, but it was fantastic.
Do you know, I want to say something to your listening audience. I have to thank my publisher, Random House and Knopf. It took an extraordinary effort for them to ensure that this book was translated into Spanish before its publication date. And I have two friends mentioned in the book, Xavier Romeo Mata and Lynn, his wife, who broke their backs to ensure that the book had my Spanish Puerto Rican voice.
It did.
All right, I know.
Because as an Argentinian, I had to look it up.
Oh, good. I'm actually glad. No. I'm glad for a reason. Because I think that hearing our voice, not just the Puerto Rican voice, but that others would appreciate that they were actually reading my book like others who read English are reading the English. Esto es Sonia en español. And it was important to me to ensure that this book came out simultaneously with the English.
No, se logró y la verdad el castellano estaba perfecto.
Gracias.